When Paul Newman passed away in 2008, many believed his greatest legacy wasn't celebrity or awards. It was Newman's own, the brand built on generosity and purpose. He placed its future in the hands of people he thought would honor that mission. But according to his eldest daughter, that trust may have been broken. She says the very heart of her father's vision is being altered. The values, the intentions, even the family's role. And if you look back, the signs were there all along. Small changes, quiet removals, decisions made without those who knew Paul best. For years, concerns simmered in private. But now, one of Paul Newman's daughters isn't holding back, and she's ready to expose what she believes really happened. How failure led him to fame. In 1925, in the quiet suburb of Cleveland Heights, Ohio, a boy named Paul Leonard Newman entered the world, complete with the striking blue eyes that would one day captivate millions. But behind those baby blues wasn't a soft-spoken, well-behaved kid. Paul was a handful, mischievous, curious, and always towing the line between charm and trouble. Hollywood had no idea what was coming, but trouble already knew his name. From early on, Newman felt that magnetic pull toward performing. Still, school wasn't exactly where he shined. As a young Jewish boy, he often stood out for all the wrong reasons. He wasn't accepted into his high school fraternity, and a family friend would later say simply that he had a rough time. But honestly, Newman was his own toughest critic. Looking back, he once admitted that he never felt like he was naturally good at anything. Not in sports, not in school, not even socially. It's hard to believe considering the icon he'd become, but that deep sense of self-doubt would shape him in ways he never expected. At home, life wasn't much easier. His father, Arthur, ran a sporting goods store and fully expected Paul to take over one day. But Paul's heart wasn't in business. He wanted something bigger, something unpredictable. Their relationship stayed distant and cold. Arthur was tough, hard-drinking, and not exactly the encouraging type. Paul often felt like nothing he did could measure up. Then there was his mother, Teresa, a whole different challenge. She was a perfectionist straight out of old-world Europe, keeping furniture wrapped in plastic and emotions barely under control. One day she'd smother Paul with affection. The next, she'd unleash her temper. On the surface, the Newman household looked polished and proper, but behind that facade was tension and volatility. Still, somehow, Paul found his escape. His first taste of performing came at just 7 years old, playing a tiny court jester in a local production of Robin Hood. From that moment on, the stage became his safe haven. He joined the children's theater program at the Cleveland Playhouse, and that creative spark just kept growing. After graduating high school in 1943, Newman enrolled at Ohio University, joining the Phi Kappa Tau fraternity. But college life barely had a chance to begin before World War II changed everything. He decided to enlist in the Navy, dreaming of becoming a pilot. The story that spread later was that colorblindness stopped him, but that wasn't true. Newman later admitted that math, not eyesight, grounded him. The calculations required to fly just weren't his strength. Still determined to serve, he trained as a radio man gunner. And that's where fate stepped in again, this time to save his life. In 1945, his unit was assigned to the aircraft carrier USS Bunker Hill. But at the very last moment, his pilot came down with a severe ear infection, forcing them to stay behind. Days later, the Bunker Hill was hit by 2 kamikaze planes, killing hundreds on board. If not for that one earache, Paul Newman's story could have ended right there. He returned home carrying a new sense of purpose. That close call didn't just spare his life. It lit a fire inside him, a determination to make his second chance truly matter. After World War II, Paul found himself at a crossroads, figuring out who he was and what he wanted to be. He wasn't afraid to grind either. He tried just about everything, from lugging around encyclopedias and going door to door as a salesman, to even stepping into the boxing ring for training. Newman hustled hard. But eventually, That restless energy led him to Kenyon College in Gambier, Ohio. That's where the acting spark really ignited. He threw himself into the college theater scene, studying drama while also earning a degree in economics in 1949. After graduation, he hit the road, joining summer stock theater groups like the Belfry Players and the Woodstock Players. Those gigs were his training ground, helping him sharpen his instincts and craft. Then came a year at the Yale School of Drama, where he got serious about his technique. After that, it was straight to New York City to study under the legendary Lee Strasberg, one of the most respected acting teachers in the world. It was during this time, while chasing his dream, that Newman also met Jackie Witt, a fellow aspiring performer who became his first wife. They married young, right in 1949, but their relationship was rocky from the start. Newman's mother, Teresa, never approved. Coming from her old-world mindset, she looked down on Jackie, the daughter of a butcher, and didn't think she was a suitable match for her son. But as things would unfold, her disapproval would turn out to be the least of their troubles. By 1953, Newman had landed his big break on Broadway in the play Picnic. What he didn't know then was that stepping onto that stage would also introduce him to the woman who would change his life forever, Joanne Woodward. Now their first meeting wasn't some movie-style love-at-first-sight moment. Joanne thought Paul was handsome, sure, but maybe too handsome, almost too perfect, with his clean-cut looks and polite charm. She later said he seemed more like someone straight out of an advertisement than a real man. But beneath that polished exterior was depth, warmth, and wit she hadn't expected. And for Paul, it was Joanne's beauty that first caught his eye, but her intelligence and spirit kept him intrigued. Slowly, admiration began to replace infatuation. Still, there was one big problem. Paul Newman was already married, and he and Jackie had 2 young kids at home. What started as a professional connection with Joanne quietly turned into something deeper, something forbidden. Before long, Newman was living a secret double life, husband and father on one side, rising star and secret lover on the other. Things got even messier when his wife gave birth to their 3rd child while he was still seeing Joanne in secret. Newman would later admit that the guilt tore at him constantly, but the pull he felt toward Joanne was undeniable. After Picnic ended, Paul and Joanne went their separate ways for a while. But fate clearly wasn't done with them. A few years later, they crossed paths again, and this time, those buried feelings came rushing back. The connection was still there, stronger than before. They soon realized they shared more than chemistry. Both came from families where their fathers were successful businessmen, and both had complicated relationships with their mothers. That understanding drew them closer, deepening their bond. When they eventually moved to Hollywood together, their careers began to rise in tandem. They both landed studio contracts, and their affair grew into something serious. Their relationship hit its boiling point while filming The Long Hot Summer in 1957. The on-screen chemistry was electric, but off-screen, it was clear Newman's life had reached a breaking point. He finally made the decision to leave his marriage behind. In 1958, he convinced Jackie to grant him a divorce so he could marry Joanne. But the emotional fallout was brutal. Jackie later admitted that the betrayal cut deep, and even years later, she said the pain never really faded. Newman's daughter Stephanie would later say, the split destroyed her mother. Despite the heartbreak he left behind, Newman and Woodward's love story became one of Hollywood's most iconic pairings. They married in 1958, both with thriving careers and a magnetic energy that audiences couldn't get enough of. Together, they were a golden couple, glamorous, talented, and completely captivating both on-screen and off. Paul often described Joanne as one of a kind, and she saw him as steady, kind, and deeply genuine. But for all their fairy tale appearances, their love story wasn't picture perfect. The hidden cracks behind stardom. Now, 1958 turned out to be a landmark year for Paul. Not only did he marry the remarkable Joanne Woodward, but he also delivered one of the most defining performances of his career in Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, alongside the dazzling Elizabeth Taylor. The film became a massive hit, earning him his very first Oscar nomination and officially cementing his place among Hollywood's elite. On the surface, it looked like everything in his life was falling perfectly into place. But behind that glamorous image, things at home were far more complicated. While Paul was just starting to break through, Joanne had already tasted success. The year before, in 1957, she'd become one of the youngest actresses ever to win an Academy Award for her role in The Three Faces of Eve. At just 27, she was being hailed as Hollywood's next great leading lady. But that spotlight didn't stay on her for long. Before she knew it, Paul's star began to rise so high it completely eclipsed her own. A familiar story in the film industry. Then, in 1959, the couple welcomed their first child, and everything began to change. Joanne started putting her family first, often torn between her love for acting and her responsibility as a mother. She carried a deep sense of guilt every time she left her children for a movie set. Eventually, she chose motherhood over her career, but that choice came with real consequences. While she stayed home with their growing family, Paul's fame skyrocketed, and that imbalance quietly bred resentment over time. Years later, Joanne would speak candidly about those sacrifices. She adored her children deeply, but she admitted that being both an actor and a parent was nearly impossible. That harsh reality was something Paul struggled with too. He spent much of his life trying to reconcile his public image as the perfect husband and father with the guilt and chaos that often played out behind closed doors. Paul Newman had become the ultimate Hollywood heartthrob, the blue-eyed icon who seemed to have it all. His love for Joanne became part of his legend, especially after a now-famous interview line made headlines. When asked how he stayed faithful, he compared staying loyal to his wife to choosing steak over a hamburger. Fans loved it. It became one of the most quoted lines of his career. But Joanne hated it. She later admitted that it made her feel objectified, like she was being reduced to a piece of meat instead of a partner. Beneath their glamorous image, that kind of tension hinted at deeper cracks in their marriage. There was also another burden weighing heavily on Newman: the emotional distance between his two families. His 3 children from his first marriage lived modestly, while his daughters with Joanne grew up in luxury in Beverly Hills. That contrast gnawed at him. He knew the difference, felt it deeply, and carried that guilt for years. Joanne tried her best to bridge the emotional gap, but it was a pain that lingered for both of them. As the family grew, 3 daughters together, plus Newman's 3 older kids, their household was full of life, laughter, and the kind of chaos that only comes with a big blended family. But behind all that, there was a darker shadow that followed Newman for decades: his dependence on alcohol. For much of his adult life, Newman quietly battled a drinking problem. He often went through a case of beer a day, sometimes followed by scotch. Despite his success, the drinking created real pain at home. Joanne would later describe his alcoholism as the anguish of their lives. From the very beginning, she had seen the signs. She believed drinking was his way of coping with guilt, stress, and the internal battles he rarely spoke about. Even as the problem deepened, Newman somehow managed to keep it hidden from the public. He remained high-functioning, never letting it derail his career or tarnish his image. But the toll it took on his body and his marriage was heavy. His daughter would later recall how, to shake off the effects of drinking, he had a ritual of dunking his face in ice water each morning before starting his day. Still, his drinking would lead to some truly painful moments. One night, things got so bad that Joanne found him passed out on the floor, injured after falling out of bed. That moment became her breaking point. Furious and heartbroken, she packed up their 3 daughters, drove to their Malibu beach house, and prepared to leave him for good. When Paul realized what had happened, he followed her there. desperate to make things right. But Joanne stood her ground. She refused to let him inside for days, forcing him to sleep in his car outside. It wasn't the first time alcohol had come between them, and it wouldn't be the last. Still, somehow, they managed to find their way back to each other. Even though they kept most of their private turmoil away from the public, rumors about their marriage began to swirl. The most explosive came in the late 1960s, when tabloids claimed Newman had been romantically involved with a journalist named Nancy Bacon during the filming of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. The gossip took a cruel turn when magazines started mocking his old hamburger quote, saying maybe he wasn't above picking up some bacon after all. Reports claimed that Newman and Woodward tried to silence the rumors with a newspaper ad, but Nancy Bacon herself called their affair the worst-kept secret in Hollywood. Whether it was exaggerated or not, the damage to Newman's reputation and marriage was real. Through all of this, one of Newman's biggest struggles was with fatherhood. He often admitted that he never felt truly ready to be a parent, and that he only did it because it was expected of him. In private conversations, he confessed he didn't think he'd been a good father, even saying that he wouldn't have wanted to be one of his own children. For a man who mastered every role on screen, the role of dad was the one he never felt he got right. That pain came to a devastating head in November 1978 when tragedy struck. Newman's son, Scott, just 28 years old, died after accidentally overdosing on alcohol and drugs. The loss shattered him. But from that unimaginable grief, Newman carved out a new purpose. In 1980, just 2 years after losing his son, he launched the Scott Newman Center, a nonprofit dedicated to teaching young people about the dangers of substance abuse. The mission grew, eventually expanding into the Rowdy Ridge Gang Camp, a program created to support families battling addiction together. Through the turmoil, the heartbreak, and the personal demons he faced, Paul Newman's career didn't just continue, it soared. His final race against time. With every role, Paul Newman kept digging deeper. He had this uncanny ability to take on outlaws and underdogs and give them a real sense of weight, all while wrapping it in that effortless charisma that became his trademark. Decades after The Hustler, he came back as Fast Eddie Felson in The Color of Money in 1986, and finally snagged that long-overdue Oscar. But that win didn't slow him down. Newman kept delivering standout performances and building a legacy that wasn't just about film, but also about generosity. Somehow, he only seemed to get better with age. Take The Verdict or Nobody's Fool. These were performances that showed him at his most restrained yet magnetic. Still, acting didn't always come easy for Newman. According to The Guardian, there came a time when he simply grew tired of Hollywood and decided to step away for a while. When he finally returned in 1998 with Twilight, he played a weary private detective in a film that struggled through post-production. It wasn't a massive success, but it reminded everyone of Newman's quiet power on screen. Then came Road to Perdition, where he portrayed a mob boss with chilling depth, earning yet another Oscar nomination. Age didn't dull his edge, it refined it. But acting was only one part of Paul Newman's life story. Away from the bright lights of film sets, he had a second adrenaline-filled love: racing. Most celebrities dip into motorsports like it's a weekend thrill. But Newman? He wasn't interested in posing behind the wheel. He treated racing with the same intensity he brought to his most iconic roles. He competed as a professional for more than 30 years, still chasing the finish line well into his 80s. And he wasn't just there to fill out the roster. He wanted to stand on the podium. His devotion stretched far beyond the driver's seat, too. As co-owner of Newman Haas Racing, he helped build a powerhouse team that dominated kart and IndyCar from 1983 to 2011. But that passion started long before all the trophies. Newman had always been a car guy. He owned a string of Volkswagen Beetles and even had one fitted with a Porsche engine. A neat little bomb, he called it back in 1970. That same year, a movie changed everything for him. It was Winning in 1969. Newman played race car driver Frank Capua, and even though the film didn't break records at the box office, it sparked something deep inside him. To prepare for the role, he and co-star Robert Wagner trained at the Bob Bondurant Racing School and attended a race at Watkins Glen. That experience turned fascination into obsession. By his mid-40s, Paul Newman had found a second career as a real race car driver. Instead of buying flashy cars or joining celebrity teams, he started small, driving a Datsun 510 for Bob Sharp Racing. It was a modest car, but it taught him precision and discipline. The partnership benefited both sides. Newman got his start, and Datsun got a star who could really drive. He even showed up in their ads later and won championships in their cars. To keep the attention off himself, he raced under the name P.L. Newman. It was his way of keeping things about the sport, not the spotlight. One story from a Florida race captures his down-to-earth attitude perfectly. Dressed in a McDonald's t-shirt and loafers, Newman went out to eat with journalist Robin Miller. When a waitress asked if he was really Paul Newman, Miller brushed it off, saying he was just a painter working at the track. Newman laughed about it the entire way back. By 1972, Newman was ready to go pro. His first race was at Thompson International Speedway in Connecticut, driving a Lotus Elan for Bob Sharp Racing. It marked the start of his run with the Sports Car Club of America, where he raced consistently throughout the 70s. Then came the big one, the 24 Hours of Le Mans in 1979. Alongside teammates Dick Barber and Rolf Stommelen, Newman drove for nearly a full day, finishing second overall and first in class. It was an incredible achievement, proving to everyone that he wasn't just playing racer, he was one. Through the 1980s, he stayed with Bob Sharp Racing and conquered the Trans Am Series, snagging his first win at Brainerd International Raceway in a Datsun 280ZX Turbo. He was 57 at the time, still competing against younger drivers and holding his own. His racing ventures grew beyond driving. With Bill Freeman, he formed Newman Freeman Racing, which found success in the Can-Am Series and even featured future Formula One champion Keke Rosberg. Later, his partnership with Carl Haas birthed Newman Haas Racing, a dominant force with over 100 wins, 246 podiums, and multiple championship titles. Drivers like Michael Andretti and Nigel Mansell turned that team into a legend. The most impressive part of it all? Newman's endurance. He didn't start racing seriously until his 40s, yet he kept competing into his 80s. One of his greatest moments came at the 1995 Daytona 24 Hours, where he co-drove a Ford Mustang for Roush Racing. The car, numbered 70 as a nod to his age, finished first in class and third overall, making him the oldest driver to win at a major endurance race. Even that wasn't the end. In 2004, at almost 80, he returned to Daytona, this time in a car painted to promote Pixar's Cars. The race didn't go as planned. An engine failure ended their run, but the symbolism of an 80-year-old racing star behind the wheel of a car tied to an animated movie about racing said everything about who Paul Newman was. Ageless passion in motion. But in 2008, that incredible drive met a heartbreaking turn. In May, Newman stepped away from directing a stage production of Mice and Men, citing health concerns. By June, reports surfaced about a lung cancer diagnosis. Ever private, Newman chose to fight quietly, keeping the details between family and close friends. On September 26, 2008, Paul Newman passed away at 83. Paul Newman's daughter finally confirms what we suspected. When Paul Newman passed away in 2008, he left behind not just a remarkable legacy in film, but also an empire built on kindness and purpose, Newman's Own. He trusted the future of that brand and the charitable mission behind it to his longtime advisor and close friend, Robert Forrester. On paper, it sounded simple, but according to Newman's eldest daughter, it didn't exactly go the way her father intended. She believes the values and guiding principles her father built the company on have drifted off course. And she's not alone. Several members of the Newman family have come forward, convinced that Paul's memory and mission are being betrayed. The signs that something was off started to appear not long after Paul's death, and the first clue came in the form of what looked like a small, harmless change, a redesign on one of the brand's labels. The packaging for Newman's Own Organics still carried the same wholesome, friendly vibe, still talked about goodness and giving back, but something about it felt different. Originally, the label showed Paul Newman himself, standing in that iconic, slightly quirky American Gothic pose. But he wasn't alone. Right beside him was his daughter, Nell, and her presence wasn't just for show. She had co-founded and run Newman's Own Organics right alongside her father. With her blonde hair, striking blue eyes, and quiet confidence, she was instantly recognizable as her father's daughter. Not just in looks, but in spirit. Nell shared Paul's love for good food, for giving back, and for the great outdoors. That's why it came as such a shock when, in early 2015, her image was completely erased from the label. No explanation, no announcement, just gone. Even more surprising, around that same time, Nell herself seemed to fade from the very company she helped build. Back in 1993, in her hometown of Santa Cruz, California, she had convinced her father that organic foods were the future, and she was right. She launched Newman's Own Organics with a clear vision: to bring healthy, sustainable food to everyday people. The first product? Pretzels. But they weren't just pretzels. They were a symbol of something bigger. Within a year, they became the #1 organic snack in America. From there, the hits kept coming. Newman's Own Organics rolled out organic fig Newtons and a variety of other snacks that flew off store shelves. Nell, working closely with her business partner Peter Meehan, built a brand that could be found everywhere, from niche organic shops to major supermarkets across the US and Canada. Before long, her organic line was rivaling the popularity of the original Newman's Own brand that Paul had launched back in 1982 with his friend, writer A.E. Hotchner. But somewhere along the way, things shifted. Nell drifted out of the spotlight, and her connection to the brand grew murky. It left people wondering, what really happened? And maybe more importantly, is Newman's Own still true to the vision Paul Newman had 4 decades ago? As he got older, Paul's focus turned almost entirely to philanthropy. The Newman's Own Foundation, powered entirely by the company's profits, has donated over $570 million to charities worldwide. Its mission has always been clear: to support children with serious illnesses, empower communities, improve nutrition, and inspire others to give back. Robert Forrester entered the picture years before Paul's passing. Before joining Newman's Own in 1993, he was already a respected consultant in the nonprofit world. Paul brought him on board to help open the first international hole in the wall gang camp, a place where seriously ill children could forget their struggles for a while and just be kids. The two men quickly became close. Forrester even worked for the foundation pro bono for 13 years, a sign of deep loyalty and shared purpose. Then, in 2005, he officially became the foundation's chief operating officer, later stepping into the roles of CEO of Newman's Own Inc. and co-executor of Paul's will. It was a massive show of trust. In the years following Paul's death, Forrester reported strong growth. Between 2008 and 2014, company revenue rose by more than 7%, and the foundation donated over $170 million to charity. But as leadership evolved, new faces began to take the reins. In 2014, Mike McGrath, a veteran from Wolfgang Puck Soup, became CEO of Newman's Own Inc., followed by Dave Best, formerly of General Mills and Unilever, who took over as COO. With each new leader came fresh ideas and new directions. And that's where the big question still hangs. After all these changes, is the company still living up to what Paul Newman built it for? Or has the heart of his mission been quietly lost along the way? Well, Paul Newman's daughters and his widow, the legendary Joanne Woodward, have made it very clear that they have serious doubts about how things have played out since Paul's death. When the details of how his $600 million estate would be handled first came to light, the family was reportedly stunned. To this day, none of them have any trust or respect left for the man at the center of it all, Robert "Bob" Forrester. They've questioned his control over the company and whether he's truly protecting the legacy Paul worked so hard to build. Paul's oldest daughter, Susan Kendall Newman, a former actress and television producer now active in nonprofit work, has been especially outspoken. She believes her father's legacy has been dragged through the mud. In her view, her family has been taken hostage by Forrester, who she claims is more focused on his own image and financial gain than on honoring Paul's original vision. Forrester, of course, has firmly denied all of this, calling the accusations completely false. Years earlier, when Paul was around 75, he wrote an important letter addressed to his family, his friends, and his lawyer. In it, he outlined exactly how he wanted his personal finances and the future of the Newmans' own brand to be handled. His plan was simple. He wanted his daughters to have a voice in the big decisions. He proposed creating individual charitable foundations for each of them, and together, those foundations would collectively guide the company's major moves. By 2007, Paul had begun stepping away from the day-to-day operations. He brought in a professional board of directors to oversee the business and appointed Robert Forrester as chairman. But even then, Paul was adamant that his daughters would maintain ultimate authority through their own foundations. That's when things began to get complicated. Later that same year, Paul was diagnosed with lung cancer, and everything shifted again. Just weeks after his diagnosis, he made sweeping changes to his will. The document was almost completely rewritten in the spring of 2008, just months before his passing. Forrester insisted that Paul was still sharp and clear-minded at the time, but Paul's doctors had started noting some cognitive decline, and his daughters shared deep concerns about his mental state when those revisions were made. When the will was finally read, one major detail stood out. The clauses guaranteeing his daughters' seats on the Newmans' own board were gone. Not long after, Paul promoted Forrester and another executive, Brian Murphy, to positions that essentially gave them equal authority with him, effectively handing them total control over the company. That move meant Paul's daughters and their charitable foundations were now completely under the direction of Forrester and the board. By 2015, Paul's daughters could no longer stay silent. They publicly revealed that they'd been stripped of influence, describing themselves as handcuffed by new company policies. They claimed their voices were being silenced and that the heart of their father's mission was being lost. The family became especially vocal when the Scott Newman Center, named after Paul's late son, and the Newman Haas Racing Team both lost their funding. To them, these were decisions their father would never have allowed. Then came another emotional blow. Nell Newman's image was quietly removed from the Newmans' own organics label. The company said it was a move toward brand cohesiveness, suggesting that few people recognized her face. But to the family, that explanation didn't sit right. After all, Paul would never have removed his own daughter from the brand she helped bring to life. So, the lingering question remains: is Newman's Own still the same company Paul Newman envisioned? It depends who you ask. His family believes his legacy is being trampled, while others suggest their frustration might come from being written out of his will. But one fact stands firm: Newman's Own continues to operate as a nonprofit, donating 100% of its profits to charity. So, while the company's leadership and structure may have changed, the core of Paul Newman's mission to give back still lives on.